I was having dinner with my boyfriend Vincent at this amazing Italian restaurant. After having dinner, Vincent suddenly held my hand and said, "Love you, Elaine." I blushed and said, "I love you too, Levi." I froze as I watched his face turn bright red. I realized the mistake I made and I quickly said in a shaking voice, Vincent, I love you, Vincent." But Vincent didn't buy it. He held my hand quickly and stared at me with an angry face. "Who's Levi? Are you seeing someone behind my back? Are you cheating on me?" I replied quickly, "No, of course not. Why would I do that?" Then he stood up and left immediately. Tears started running down my face. Who is Levi? Why did I call my boyfriend another name? Also, I don't know anyone named Levi. So what's wrong with me? I apologized to Vincent, but he wouldn't believe me. I went home heartbroken. My life was getting out of control because of these weird dreams I've been having lately. I feel like someone else is living my life instead of me. It started with me having dreams about places and people I've never seen in my life. I know the human imagination is capable of that, but still it seemed weird to dream people I've never met and poor old neighborhoods that I only see in movies. The first time I dreamt of a girl getting kidnapped. The second was me entering a deserted, dark, dusty building. I thought that these dreams were nightmares until the other day, I saw my friend Tina walking towards me, and I screamed at her involuntarily, "Watch out, Tina, he's behind you!" I saw a bad man wanting to hurt her. He looked like he wanted to steal her money. But to my surprise, Tina looked embarrassed. She walked to me slowly and said, "Are you crazy? People are looking at us. No one is behind me. Are you okay?" I realized that it was my imagination, and that those weird dreams are messing with my head during the daytime, not only at night. But I didn't know that I would start forgetting people's names, especially those close to me, like Vincent. Am I going insane? Should I talk to someone about this? I got home to my parents watching TV. Like most old boring couples, TV is their best way to relax. Mom said to me, "Hey, Elaine, is there something wrong? You look upset." I sighed and said, No, it's just..." But before I got the chance to finish that sentence, I heard the speaker on the TV saying, "Telepathy is always the strongest among family members. They can send each other signals. They feel what the other person is feeling. Sometimes they might even have the same thoughts." I shivered. I freaked out and yelled, "Mom, make it louder!" Mom took the remote and pushed the volume button, and the expert started explaining how identical twins could have this strong bond that makes them feel each other's pain. In rare cases, they might see the same dreams. My head was spinning. I felt so confused to hear these things. Could I be sharing my dreams with someone else? If yes, then who could it be? Mom noticed my facial expressions change with every word the expert said. I didn't want to worry her, so I said, "I'm tired. I'll be going to bed early." But I couldn't sleep. Not after what I heard. I kept thinking about it all night. Was someone trying to communicate with me? If yes, then who would it be? My friends were all well and fine. My cousins and distant relatives are well too. All of them are healthy and they live safely. Then it struck me. Could I have a relative or family member somewhere? I've known that I was adopted since I was 5 years old. But somehow I never asked about my original family, or even if I had one. I was happy with Mom and Dad because they were literally the best. I always thought of myself as an only child. My heart started racing at this thought. I couldn't wait for morning to come. At 8 a.m., I rushed to their bedroom. I opened the door violently and asked, "Mom, Dad, was I the only child when you adopted me, or did I have brothers and sisters?" My parents were still sleepy, but my question woke them up. Dad asked, "Why? What's wrong? Don't you like it here?" I responded, "Oh, no, not at all. I couldn't ask for better parents. It's just, I've been having these dreams." My parents looked worried when I explained everything that's been happening lately. I told them about the dreams and the confusion I've been having. The only plausible explanation would be this. Someone is trying to connect with me, and I repeated what the expert said on TV. Dad asked, "Are you sure you're not just imagining things? Maybe you're just stressed out." I was pissed. I was not making things up. So Mom said, to ease the tension, "We would have to contact the orphanage we picked you from. Only the manager there knows because the documents we have don't mention anything about you having relatives." And that's how our mission started. The next day, Mom and Dad called the manager, who instantly remembered them. They were the first American couple to adopt a girl from my original country. The manager confirmed that I had a twin sister. Her name was Cora, but looking for her and getting her address would take time, and we would have to wait. I was happy to solve the mystery finally, but the waiting part was killing me, especially with the dream I had 2 days later. I dreamt of a girl running in a dark, dangerous alley. She was screaming for help. I woke up sweating and breathing heavily. Was my sister in real danger? Was she asking for my help? I talked to my parents and I insisted on traveling to my home country. I need to find her and save her. I wouldn't be able to live my life normally knowing that she's in danger. My parents tried to talk me out of it, but I wouldn't listen. So they just had to go along. We booked tickets and went there. It was my first time seeing my country. It was so different, and not in a good way. I'm used to living a rich, comfortable life. I was surrounded with nice, clean things all my life, and here, it's not quite the same. We arrived at the orphanage. The manager, who was a nice old lady with white hair, welcomed us. Wow, I didn't know you were all that serious about it. I still haven't gotten enough information about it. I responded nervously. Just give me what you've got. The manager took us to her office and handed us a bunch of pictures and papers. It had addresses and names of the people we could contact. We took them and we went back to the hotel to figure out where to start. The next day, we went to one of the first addresses we had. It led us to an old building outside the city. People there stared at us. I'm sure they've never seen foreigners before, I told Dad as I was clinging more and more to him. Dad asked the landlord there about the family who adopted Cora. He grabbed my hand and pushed me towards the man for him to take a good look at me. If she's my twin, we must look alike then. The landlord stared at me for a couple of minutes and said, "The dad died 2 years ago. The mom and daughter move out. I don't know where they went." We were disappointed to hear this, but it didn't stop us from looking. We went to all the addresses and asked all the people that we were able to contact. But that didn't lead us to where she was. It was like she disappeared or something. 2 weeks later, it was time to give up. We had to go home. My parents needed to get back to their work, and I was exhausted emotionally. I couldn't find her, but I did what I had to do. A night before we left, I asked my parents to let me go out and explore the area by myself. They were tired, so Dad told me, "Keep your phone on and don't get too far." I nodded my head and I went out. I had dinner in one of the local restaurants and went to the main square where people gathered to celebrate. They were having a festival of some kind. Food stands were on the side, kids playing with balloons, music, and fireworks. I stood on the side watching and taking pictures when suddenly I heard a girl shouting, "Help! Help!" I looked around, but no one was there. A few seconds later, I heard the same sound, but this time it was clearer and sounded more terrifying. It was coming from a dark alley behind one of the food stands. I ran to it quickly, and oh my God! It was the same alley that I saw in my dream. Dark, narrow, and creepy. I shouted, "Hello? Is anyone here? Do you need help?" And the voice responded, "Yes, please! I hurt my leg!" I used my phone's flashlight and started walking. There was a little girl on the ground. She was crying and she scratched her knee. I tried to lift the girl up. She was shivering. It was not that cold, so I asked, "What's wrong?" And she responded, "She's after me! They're after me!" I asked, "What do you mean?" The girl got up and leaned on my shoulder, but before she got the chance to speak another word, I heard someone saying, "Leave her and go away! It's none of your business!" The little girl clinged on to me. She stood behind me, and then I saw a figure coming towards us. It was a girl with a fierce look on her face. She was wearing old, ripped clothes, and when I looked at her, I said with a shaking voice, "Is that you? Cora?" She looked exactly like me, except the hair, of course, and the fact that she looked so strong and could hurt me in a second if she wanted to. Cora was confused. She asked aggressively, "How do you know my name?" She stood there checking me out like I was some kind of alien. The little girl took advantage of these moments and she ran away while limping on her foot. Cora yelled at me, "Why did you let her run away, you idiot? I needed her money!" Wait, does she rob people? And then it all clicked. The dreams I've been having are not about Cora. She's not the one being attacked. The dreams are about the people Cora attacks and robs. She dreams about them. Cora needs my help, but she needs my help to stop her from hurting other people, not the other way around. I stopped her and said, "Cora, I'm your twin sister, and whether you know it or not, you asked for my help. I've been seeing the same dreams you're having about the girls you steal from." Cora looked shocked. She didn't say anything, so I continued explaining to her how we got separated at birth and got adopted by 2 families. I told her about the dreams, the orphanage, the landlord, and everything that got me here. I added, "I know that your dad died. Where do you and your mom live?" But to my shock, Cora said, "Mom died a few months ago. I live alone, close to here." Cora and I went to see where she lived. It was a small hut with a straw roof. I got inside and there wasn't much, a bed and old furniture. Cora said sadly, When you have no one to support you, you have to manage. I don't steal because I enjoy it, I steal to survive. I got back to the hotel the next morning after I spent the night at Cora's. We talked all night and got to know each other. My parents were freaking out. They wanted to report to the police that I was missing. Luckily, I got there on time. After much discussion, my parents decided to adopt Cora. She burst out crying when I told her the news. Right now, Cora's living with us. She's being homeschooled so she can join me for next year. She's doing her best. As for Vincent, he forgave me after he heard my strange story. We went back dating. One afternoon, however, I asked Cora, "By the way, sis, who is Levi?" Cora blushed and said, "The baker's boy. He used to give me free bread." She obviously had a thing for him. It's all on her face. All on her face.
Hi, my name's Amelia, and recently I had to make the most difficult decision of my life. Even now, just thinking about it, I feel like I could burst into tears. Up until last year, my life was so carefree and chilled, and then out of nowhere, both of my twin sisters got sick at exactly the same time. I was the only one who could save them. I mean, that's a pretty terrifying thing. But there's more. You see, I could only save one of them, and so that's where my story begins. My family has always been that stereotypical perfect family. My parents are still crazy in love with each other, and me and my sisters are like best friends. I have two sisters, Beth and Carly, and they are identical twins. They're only 3 years younger than me, and you'd think I'd feel a bit left out sometimes because they have that whole twin thing going on. But they treat me like I'm one of them, which is great. Last year, we vowed to spend a lot of time together because I was going to be heading to college on the other side of the country. My dad planned this epic road trip, and a week before we were due to go, Beth started feeling really unwell. She woke up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, and her fever was sky high. By the time morning came, Carly started complaining that her stomach hurt, and pretty soon, she had a fever too. It was a Sunday, so we drove to the hospital to try and get an emergency appointment. As soon as the nurse at reception saw them, she rushed them into a private room in the hospital. The skin on their face was starting to turn a slight shade of yellow, and that's when we realized something was seriously wrong. This wasn't just flu. A few hours later, after a lot of blood tests and painfully waiting for the results, the head doctor informed us that Beth and Carly were suffering from a rare form of liver disease, and that it had probably been developing ever since their birth. Mom burst into tears and started blaming herself. When she'd fallen pregnant with the twins, she hadn't known, and she'd worked on a wine estate, so she'd been constantly tasting and reviewing new wines. When she found out she was pregnant, she was paranoid that all the wine would affect their health. Dad was comforting her, telling her of course it wasn't her fault. I could see how upset Dad was too, but he was trying to hold it together for Beth and Carly. They were devastated, of course, although I don't think they truly understood what it all meant. The doctors left us so we could have some private family time. We managed to calm Mom down, and Dad even cracked a joke and got us all laughing. We were still giggling when the head doctor walked back in with a grim expression on his face. My heart sunk. He looked like he was about to tell us that somebody had died. He pulled up a seat and asked us all to sit down. I could see Mom getting teary again, and so I grabbed her hand and held it tightly. The doctor told us that there was some more news, and he didn't know how to tell us. I looked at Beth and Carly. I would have done anything to make them better. Little did I know, that was about to become an actual reality for me a moment later. Turns out, Beth and Carly's disease was a lot more critical than we thought, and that their only chance of survival would be if they could find two donors who would be willing to donate part of their liver. I couldn't believe it. My baby sisters needed transplants. I immediately jumped up and said, I'll do it right now. Take my liver, please. Just save my sisters. I couldn't stop crying. I felt like our whole world was crumbling. And yet, Beth and Carly were so strong through all of this. They just lay there, comforting each other, whilst Mum and I were a mess. Dad got to work straight away. He started contacting all our family. Cousins, aunts, uncles, even second cousins. Everyone was heartbroken to hear the news, and they all rushed to do blood tests to find out if they would be a match for the twins. Once we'd stopped crying, Mom and I went off to do the tests. I didn't even want to leave my sisters alone in that room. What if they died before we even got the results? So many thoughts were running through my head. I'm terrified of needles. It's like my biggest phobia, but I didn't even feel this one. My mind was so far away, I might as well have been on another planet. The results came out quick. Unfortunately, Mom's liver wasn't stable enough to make her a suitable donor, and nor was Dad's. The doctors informed us that this was normal due to their age, etc. I was crossing all of my fingers and toes as a nurse walked in to hand the doctor my results. "You're a match," he said. I had to have him repeat this because I couldn't believe what he was saying. The relief was so overwhelming that I actually ran up to him and started hugging him. I could save my sisters and everything would go back to normal. The transplant surgery would only take a day, but the recovery process was at least a month. Dad had obviously canceled our vacation, but then I realized something else. I couldn't go to college. I'd missed the first 2 weeks, and what if the surgery went wrong? No, I needed to be here and help my sisters recover. I tried to put all negative thoughts out of my head and focus on the positive. Later that day, I called the admissions department of my college and informed them I'd have to defer until the following year. They completely understood and sent their good wishes for my sisters. Even though I knew it was the right decision, it still killed me that I wouldn't be going to college at the same time as all my friends. I'm the most indecisive person in the world, so I'm surprised I made that decision so quickly. The doctors scheduled the surgery for the following month. They couldn't afford to wait any longer because Beth was especially struggling, but they wanted to make sure everything was in place. They needed to keep an eye on me to make sure my health was okay for the transplant to be successful. The slightest problem with my liver, and they wouldn't be able to do it. Every day I had to go for blood tests to check my liver. Beth and Carly were stable, and even though they have to stay in the hospital, we still had a fun time together, watching movies, and loads of their friends visited. About a week before the scheduled surgery date, the doctor called me. I was over at my friend Amy's house at the time. As soon as I heard what he said, I rushed to the hospital. My parents were already waiting there. This next bit of news was like a punch to the chest. After a lot of research, the doctors had discovered that if I wanted to live a long and healthy life, I could only donate a very small part of my liver, which meant that I could only donate enough to save one of my sisters. I felt like I was going to pass out. No one else had been a correct match so far, which meant that I was the only one who could save my sisters. And now, here I was, being told that actually I could only save one of them. I didn't want to deal with this. I was only 17 years old. Why was I having to make such a life-altering decision? I wasn't even an adult yet. Mom and Dad held me and told me everything would be okay and that they were sure they would find another donor. But I had to make my decision quickly. I walked to my sister's room, and when I walked in, I could tell I already knew. It was obvious they'd been crying. Fear pulsed through me. There was no way I could make this decision. They weren't just my sisters, they were my best friends. Beth, who was slightly more sick than Carly, told me to pick Carly. And Carly told me I had to choose Beth because Beth needed the help more. I couldn't take it. I ran out of the hospital. They could figure it out, and I knew what I needed to do. Either way, I felt like my life was over. I was supposed to be at college with all my friends, and instead I was left with the responsibility of choosing which of my sisters I would save. The next week passed by in a blur. Before I knew it, the day of surgery had arrived. Beth and Carly had chosen which of them I was saving, and they wanted to tell me until after the surgery. I was put under an anesthetic, and afterwards the surgeons were smiling. It had gone successfully. this woman standing in the hospital was his daughter. I couldn't believe it. As my dad explained this all to me, I honestly thought I'd snap. First of all, how had my dad kept this a secret for all these years? Second of all, what on earth was she doing here at a time like this? I so badly wanted to hate her, but she saved us big time. My dad had reached out to her when we'd needed donors for Beth and Carly. Now she was here because her blood tests had shown she was also a perfect match. She could save the other twin. When I heard this, I wanted to hug her. I didn't even have time to be angry at my dad because all I could think about was how both of my sisters would survive. And now we had a fourth sister, too. This was crazy. So, in the end, it all worked out. Sally, our new stepsister, saved Carly's life, and I saved Beth's. I want to say that we all lived happily ever after, but of course, my dad had a lot to answer for. All that mattered in that moment, though, was celebrating Beth and Carly's successful transplants. We could deal with the rest later. And oh boy, did we have a lot to talk about.